sky, hot, sticky air. That's how almost 80% of you describe tornadoes and severe weather. So how many of you have ever had a fun day planned only for it to rain or storm? Like everyone. Data given by storm chasers helps to create better forecasts for events. Most people view storm chasers as adrenaline junkies seeking to find their next rush. However, that's not always the case. They provide vital information to create more accurate forecasts. Data given by Timothy Coleman on Tornado Alley, he recorded many hours of studies of many weather events and discovered that Tornado Alley is not necessarily this shape that everyone thinks it is. The common perception has been that it's just from like Oklahoma up into the Dakotas, but it actually includes more southeast into Mississippi and Alabama. This study has helped storm chasers realize that there are more places to chase and gain data. He has also discovered that the United States averages nearly 1,000 tornadoes every year, and this number has been increasing since 1973 due to advancing technology. In 1973, storm chasers would report tornadoes before they would issue any warnings for storms, and it caused a lot of danger to people. And most tornadoes didn't get reported. Since then, we have been able to report more and more tornadoes and save more and more lives. The spotter class at Purdue University studies storms in the classroom. They spend about 20-some odd hours in the classroom just studying the data, and then they go on a storm chasing field trip to the Great Plains, which is in the Oklahoma side of Tornado Alley, and they chase storms. And they gather data such as wind speeds, humidity levels, cloud cover, and others to really study the storms and use the data to get a better understanding. This is what a track of a tornado looks like. And this is straight line wind damages. Because storm chasers are going out in the field and actually studying these, we have been able to pick out more and more tornadoes versus straight line winds. Back before 1973, these grain bins that have been destroyed by straight line winds would have been called a tornado because it looks almost identical to the kind of damage a tornado would have caused. But however, the way technology and storm chasers have gathered this data, it has helped to show the differences, and that is why we have more tornadoes reported now. On May 31st, 2013, there was a devastating tornado in El Reno, Oklahoma. Tim Vasquez details the events in his article, Forecast Center. He studied the way that the forecast was set up. The forecast had cool, dry air coming in off the Rocky Mountains and very warm, humid, moist air coming in from the Gulf of Mexico, and it collided over Oklahoma. They knew that there was going to be a risk of tornadoes that day. However, they weren't able to pinpoint exactly where the tornadoes were going to happen. The storms started forming in western Oklahoma, which is outside of their predicted range for the storms, and that started to freak them out. The storm chasers made sudden trips west to try to intercept this supercell. Three cells collided, creating this monster storm. Tim and Paul Samaras and their friend Carl Young, three storm chasers, were traveling and chasing the storm. While chasing the storm, there's many risks. They had studied previous storms, and most tornadoes had moved from southeast to northeast in their tracks. they thought they were safe traveling south of the storm because most of the tornadoes that they had studied had moved to the northeast. They were not safe, and the tornado made a sudden turn in the track. They were sitting approximately right here, and this tornado made a sudden south track in its path, hitting them directly. They were all killed, and since then, storm chasers have really studied more into the storms and the risks to keep themselves safe. In an article called "And Now Live from Oklahoma City," warnings and watches are discussed then and now. So they talk about 1974, and they're sitting in the offices on phone calls. And phone calls back in 1974 were not very accurate. They were slow, and no one was able to communicate fast. Now, when there's a tornado warning, they're able to issue it ahead of when the storm hits. So you have anywhere from 5 to 15 minutes before you're in the danger zone of a tornado. Back in 1974, storm chasers and even farmers would sit out in their fields just watching the sky. And if they saw something, they might think about calling it in, but they'd get themselves to as much safety as they could first. And so many more people lost their lives then compared to how many people die in tornadoes now. Brandon Ivy, a storm chaser, talks about the many risks he faces while storm chasing. He thinks the biggest risk to him and his group is lightning, because you cannot predict where lightning will strike. He also says traffic is a major concern for him too, because people pay more attention to the sky when there's a thunderstorm rather than the road, and when there's a tornado on the ground, people will drive right through stoplights and stop signs, and that also poses a threat to him and his group. He also stays away from high precipitation supercells, which are storms with lots of rain and hail, which can obstruct the tornadoes and damages. Overall, there are several reasons why storm chasing can be beneficial to the storm chasing community, but those benefits don't come without their risks. And for those of you who raised your hands at the beginning of the speech, you may be out of luck, because it is hard to predict what the Lord will bestow on us here today in terms of weather. Thank you.